Hello. How you doing?
ברוך השם, listen, אני צריכה לצאת מוקדם, יש ועד פגישה, ועד הורים היום, ב9.
Okay.
All right?
There's Seder. Everybody, let me see. I'm just making sure everybody's in. Bobby was just here. I don't see her now. Let's see. What happened to Bobby? Wasn't she just on?
את משלמת ועד הבית או בעל הבית שלך?
Yeah. How much do you guys pay a month? I'm curious.
250 ש"ח.
Yeah, we paid them for 300 for 2 months.
Oh, wow. No, זה 250 כל חודש. אני עושה את הצ'ק.
I don't see Bobby. Bobby says she's on, but I don't actually see her. Okay. Okay. Let's see what Bobby is saying, and then we'll start. Okay. But not letting me in. That's so interesting. She should try to get into this.
Are they doing 613, 613?
Yeah, but I think the other link doesn't work anymore.
I use the other link. The last one.
You use the numbers or you use the Torch Zoom?
I use the number, not the torch.com. I use the numbers and then I use 613, 613.
Yeah, it's so weird.
I didn't click on it. I put it in my Zoom, the numbers.
I'll give her the numbers one. Don't know what the story is. I'm like, we're having so many problems with it. Okay, here she is. Hi, Bobby. Hello, Bobby. What? I need to let Rabbi Wolpe know what the problem is. And I've spoken to them about this. Today is giving me a hard time. It said I wasn't able to go into the Torch account. They detected I'm from another country. The host is supposed to be in Texas. We've done this for a year and a half.
I just hit the wrong thing. That's why I couldn't get in.
Oh, you hit the what? The wrong link?
Yeah, well, I just hit, it said, the little thing comes up a square and it says to join with this or that. And I must have pushed the wrong.
Got it.
But you know what I do? I can't find it. I go back to Seidel. I just go back and look for hers and just link on through her, because then I don't have a problem, because it says Torch, whatever, torchzoom.com. And so
I need to speak with them. The torchzoom.com doesn't work or works?
It works.
It works. Okay, great. Trying to find, I'm using my daughter's laptop and I can't find the volume. So I can't hear you guys so well.
I can hear you real well.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you real well.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to start.
Hi,
we are in Israel. We're a parsha still ahead of you.
Yes.
You guys are in Bamidbar, right?
Yes, we just started this week. The first parsha this week.
Yeah, you're in Bamidbar, and we're in Nessel. So basically, because all Jews have to read Bamidbar before Shavuot. The idea, and we spoke about this a week ago, is that in order to receive the Torah as a nation, we need to be strong individuals. So Bamidbar, the whole idea book is called Numbers, is Pekudim, is we have to be counted. The way the counting took place was very fascinating. It wasn't that they collected a half a shekel, and a month before that, there was also another demographic census study, and that was for something else, for the Mishkan. And this is a month later, they're bringing a half a shekel, and they're getting counted individually, a head count. And as the other census was more, how much is in the Shimon tribe? How much is in this family? This didn't go like this. It was individual. Every Jew had to show up in front of Moshe and Aaron and be counted. And it was like almost like Yocheved, Bas, whatever, her Abba and her Ima. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron would look at Yocheved. They would tell her what her mission in life was. Can you imagine the clarity? Like they would tell her, this is what you were brought down here to the world for, and this is what you got to do. And they gave her the blessing. Each and every person would have this audience with the leaders of the community who were able to, so to say, like give them like a CT scan and tell them where they need to go, what they need to correct. So basically years of therapy and whatever, how long this meeting took. And the next parsha, next week is Naso, means to elevate, is the idea that each and every Jew had to be elevated and needed to be reminded that he matters, that there was never, ever another person like them. Like they are Adam Arishon, the first man and the first woman, even Adam. There was no one else in the world at the time. They mattered because they were humanity, right? This counting is exactly the same thing. And it's really coming to tell us how much God loves us. When we have precious jewels, we count them, we look at them, we have money, we keep looking how much we have. It's a sign of love. And why does it have to be read before Shavuot? The diaspora, we almost like we wait for everybody to get to this together. So we all read this parsha before Shavuot, because the giving of the Torah, it's not like going to be given to a lump sum of people and just thrown at them. It's like, here, it's a gift. And it's a gift of love. It's a gift that God gives. The biggest gift of himself is the Torah. And the analogy that we've given many times is that the wedding place that's going to take place Saturday night between us and the Almighty, what connects the infinite and the finite is the Torah. That's the bridge. That's our pathways to connection to the Almighty. He gives us this gift and says, I so want to be connected to you. And this is a way to connect with me. This is the marriage contract. That's what it is. And what is a marriage contract in Judaism, the ketubah? It's all about the obligation of what a man owes his wife. Like, it's kind of wild. Women in Judaism were always emancipated. Years and years ago, we had, so to say, these contracts that elevated women and gave them a status. This is something that now humanity has caught on the last 100 years, but we've been doing this for a while. When you look at a ketubah, it's not about what she needs. She needs to cook. She needs to bear him children. It's nothing about what a woman has to do for the man. It's all about the obligation of how he has to take care of her. He needs to cherish her and watch and protect her and elevate her and pleasure her and sustain her financially and respect her, you know? And she reciprocates that love and she builds the home. A woman in Judaism is called Bait. Her name is the name of the home because she builds the home. She's the kli. She's the vessel to hold this blessing. So Hashem is counting us, and it's so beautiful. It wasn't just the random counting, like you got an email and you had to submit some data. They got to go in person in front of Moshe and Aaron, and you couldn't say, okay, Cohen family, we're 8 of us. We're a party of 8. No. Head count. Okay, Devorah. Hi, Michal. Hi, Tamar. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Martha. It's very, very personal and very intimate. And that's because this relationship with God is very intimate and it's very personal. Okay, so now this whole book, they got out of Egypt. We kind of came out as a nation. But remember, we were half cooked. We weren't really ready. 49th level of defilement. We were slaves. We were really messed up. We were emotionally not good, not well, right? But now, in order to heal, Hashem is talking to us as individuals. He says, I'm about to give you a great gift. So we come out as a lump sum, so to say, as a nation, because that's what gives us the energy. We're connected, we're a community. But now, in order to have a strong community, we have to have strong individuals. That's why our enemies usually attack us when it comes to family stuff, you know? They attack us like the laws of the Greeks was always like things that had to do with the family. Like the emperors would not kidnap, there was like a law if a Jewish couple wants to get married, the woman would have to live with the emperor the night before. Why'd they do that? In order to, like that would mess her up, obviously, right? It's such trauma to start life as a married woman, been basically violated. So they knew that in order to defeat a nation, you defeat the family, you defeat the individual. It's very interesting that right now in the world, very much, all the indoctrination of the family is breaking down, and how they're trying to educate the next generation it's almost like the family doesn't matter. We don't believe in the family idea. Then you break down the individual, right? And then you don't have a nation. So we're about to get the biggest gift, and Hashem says, this is going to be a personal contract. It's going to be a contract given to all of you, but it's also going to be personal, like intimate. Literally, you and me are going to dance tango. That's what God is saying. Now, we're going to delve into the Megillah that we read on Shavuot. And there's a lot of questions the commentators ask. Why do we read Ruth on Shavuot? It seems to be a little bit like, doesn't fit. Why? On Shavuot, we receive the Torah. It's such a grandiose, like big dramatic event. The voice of God was heard. You've all seen the Ten Commandments, right? It's like nice to have the sound effects. Like obviously read it in the Bible and the 5 books of Moses. It's pretty dramatic, but hearing it, seeing it, and the thunder and the lightning and Charleston Heston, like with his voice, right? He's Moses, right? And you got you get the feeling, right? The dramatic feeling. And they say, the rabbis say that if you tune in during this time, this week, the week of Malchus, the week of the Sephirah of kingdomship, it's like the highest, more elevated status that we could be in, right? It's very intimate. It's very close. It's nobility. It's royalty. This week, if you tune in, you will hear the voice of God calling out to you, your personal calling, your personal mission to be here in the world. You see, we are counted individually, and we've spoken about this a lot in our class, because there's a personal mission that no one else can do. Only you can affect and impact your inner circles. Like I can't expect someone to be a mom to my kids. Only I could be the mom to my kids. And no one else could be a member in my community. Only I can, right? We all have circles of impact. It's not like, and we have a mission in this world. Not all of us are going to build hospitals. Not all of us are going to discover the cure for cancer. Not all of us are going to do a $2 million fundraiser or $10 million fundraiser. We each have a mission that is super important as launching a spaceship, okay? It's unique. It's individual to you. There's never been a person like you in history, and there never will be. You get it? What an amazing responsibility that lays on our shoulder. Now, the Torah is the blueprint of creation, and when we tune in and we learn the Torah, we actually through it get inspiration, and it awakens us to find our path and to find our personal mission. It also awakens us to find our mission as a nation, which we know our mission is to do tikkun olam, to make this world a better place, to bring consciousness and morality into the world, okay? And values. But besides that, there's also individual missions that each and every one of us has. And this is a perfect time to tune into it, because the energy right now is in the world. We're really about to get married in a few days. It's so exciting, It's like the dress is hanging in the closet. You take it out, you look at it, and you're so excited. You have the butterflies. We're in the butterfly stage. Like we're really about to unite with the Almighty. The Almighty is saying, I yearn for this relationship with you. I care for you. That's why the Midbar will always be read before Shavuot. Always. Sorry. So it seems like on Shavuot is interesting. why are we choosing to read the story of Ruth, which is not as, doesn't seem as grandiose as the giving of the Torah, of the story of the actual giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai? Seems to be a more low-key kind of story. Maybe we could title it as A Day in Beit Lechem, the story of a life of a woman in Beit Lechem, right? It's like Ruth and Naomi, they leave Israel, there's famine, he's a leader, he shouldn't have really left, but he did. They go down to Moab. Moab has not been very nice to the Jewish people. They wouldn't let us stop in their country and quench our thirst. Therefore, we are not allowed to intermarry with them. There never, ever could be a convert from the Moabites and the Ammonites. But now we know that the women of Moab and the women of Ammon were allowed to allow them to convert if they choose to, as we will see in this Megillah. Ruth is actually a convert from this nation that we say we don't take converts from, because we take the females weren't cruel. It was the males, okay? Now, very interesting. Why read it on the time of Shavuot? So the story of Ruth takes place around this time. So I guess like it took place during the Omer, where they're gathering the grain. It's kind of around this time. But there's got to be a deeper meaning to that. So the same way Ruth chose to receive the Torah, we are also now almost like converts coming into this relationship, accepting the vows. It's like we're exchanging vows and we are receiving the Torah, right? The same way Ruth received the Torah and committed herself to being, she was a Jew by choice. We are now Jews by choice. We are choosing the Torah. We're saying we're committed to this relationship as much as God is committed to this relationship, you know? We're extending the hand and we're excited about it as much. Now, another thing that Ruth, the death anniversary, and the birthday of King David is Shavuot. Who is King David? King David is the father of the Davidic dynasty that the Messiah, Mashiach, will come from. Malchut, the kingdom, the kings of Israel come from King David. So to show us his lineage, if you want to learn about a great person, you look at his great-grandmother. Ruth was his great-grandmother. And you really, to create great kings, they must have had a great mother. The lineage of the matriarchal lineage has to be strong, meaning this is a woman's class. So I'm saying to us that we have such impact on the next generation, like unbelievable impact, you know? So there's also another connection that's very interesting for Shavuot. We're saying Jew by choice. We're also Jews by choice now. We're saying it's the anniversary of King David. What is the message that King David and Ruth teach us? Is that it's okay to fall and to be in a low place, and you could always bring yourself back up. It's never too late, you know? And there's no place that is too low to pick yourself up from. And the Torah always gives us that. It's like reroute your path. Like you've gone on ways and you actually didn't listen to the instructions, and it will reroute you. Like GPS will say reroute, and it puts you back, recalculates your path. The Torah is there to help us. It's like the exit sign, like you've been on the wrong path, like here, could reroute, get back on the path. It's a light that shines in the dark for us to light our path for us, you know, to give us purpose, to show us our mission, and to bring us to our full potential. So it's very fitting that Ruth, who went through a really very hard life, and King David also, they both suffered tremendously. They were ostracized, they were criticized, and yet they rose in terms of a relationship with God to the highest of heights, you know? King David, he wrote Psalms. Psalms is all about a love story and a love connection of intimate relationship with God. Like you read Psalms, and one of the biggest things that King David says, Sheva ipol tzadik v'kam. 7 times a righteous person will fall and he will get up. It's not that he doesn't fall. 7 is just a symbolic number. It's just the idea that we will fall. It's okay. Pick yourself up. In contrast, which I'm about to show you something really phenomenal that my teacher pointed out to me. Let's go back into the Megillah of Ruth. Okay? So it's not trivial at all. And it's not just the story of a day, of a life in Beit Lechem. So Ruth, as we were saying, is a very tragic figure. She's a Moabite. She's the daughter of a king. She's a princess. She leaves her father's home and marries a Jewish guy. Her sister Orpah marries, so Elimelech and Naomi have 2 sons. They go down to Moab. They marry out, and they die. And Elimelech dies, and they lose all their money and their status. The 2 girls cannot go back to their father's home. You went and married a Jew? We don't like you anymore. They had nowhere to go back to. That explains why they stayed with Naomi. What did Naomi give them? Naomi didn't have any money anymore. Elimelech and Naomi were very rich, but once they got to Moab, they lost all their riches. Naomi realizes it's time to turn and go back to Israel. And she's in a very awkward position. She's going to be looked down upon. She knows it. She's judged because her and her husband left Israel in a time of famine and crisis. And they left Israel. It's kind of like unheard of, like a leader leaves. Can you imagine, like, we have a crisis? And Benjamin Netanyahu says, you know what? I'm out. I'm going to New York right now. Too many missiles, right? It's unheard of. We're going to understand that the motive of Elimelech and Naomi was not as simplistic as going to Moab to have water and bread and sustain themselves physically. There was a spiritual reason why they went down there and a plan, but it wasn't in sync with God's plan. They try to hasten the redemption, but it wasn't time. And I'm going to go back to it in a minute. So now Naomi says, people are going to look down at me because you left us in a time of trouble. And now I'm coming back. 2 of my boys died. Husband died. She's a widow and a bereaved mom, right? So she's really broken. And she's not rich anymore. And she's not beautiful anymore because she went through a lot, you know. There's so much L'Oreal could do for white hairs, you know. And she also now has these 2 girls who are not Jewish, and she doesn't really want to go back to Israel with these 2 girls. So she says to them, persuades them, listen, it's not cool to be Jewish. It's true. You're supposed to persuade someone who wants to try to convert. We get persecuted. Like, it's not simple to be a Jew. We've gone through Holocaust, Inquisitions, a lot of things, right? Sorry. And she tries to persuade them. And Ruth and Naomi are like in the same spiritual position. They're both insisting on going with her, and they say, no, we want to go with you. We want to go with you. We want to convert to Judaism. We want to be with you. And she pushes them away 3 times. And then Orpah, the sister, she says, okay, turns around and leaves. Gives Naomi a kiss and a hug and leaves. And Ruth says, we know the famous thing, Ba'asher tilchi elech, and where you will die, I will be buried. I'm going to follow you. Wherever you sleep, I will sleep. Whatever you go through, I will go through. I'm with you through thick and thin, in my language, okay? But basically the gist of what she's saying is that it's an interesting dialogue that the Midrash tells us, that Naomi tells Ruth and Orpah, listen, to be a Jew is not simple. It's about to be Shabbat. I can't really be on the road on Shabbat, and I'm going to have to camp. So Ruth says to Naomi, okay, wherever you go, I will go, meaning I'm willing to be on your journey. And then she says to them, and we have very explicit laws, very particular laws, that we cannot be in seclusion with a man that we're not married to. So Ruth says, Bashel tishni alin ela alin, wherever you will sleep, I will sleep. Okay? Meaning we're not going to, because she says to her, Ruth, we're not going to be able to just stop at any motel. We're going to have to be in places that are modest. And Ruth said, I'm with you. And then she says, we have very particular laws about Jewish burial. And she said, I'll be buried where you be buried. Meaning I am committed to the Jewish life. What Naomi is trying to convey to Ruth and Orpah is that Judaism is not just a religion of spirituality, which is very important. It's not just heart. I'm a Jew at heart, but it's actions. We got to do kind deeds. We have to do tzedakah. We have to be involved. We have to do mitzvot. It's not just like a remote things out there. She's saying to them, it's a real commitment. Are you guys committed to this kind of life? And she says yes. Now, very bizarre. The Midrash tells us about Orpah. Orpah, she had a different name, but she was named Orpah from the root of oif, neck, because she turned her neck around. Now, why are we looking so down at Orpah? Like, after all, she was not Jewish. She's a Moabite. She thought about it. Naomi was basically trying to persuade her, don't come. She turns around. What happens, the Midrash tells us, to Orpah? That night, she goes and lives with 100 men. She had lived like 10 years with Naomi and Elimelech, who were very righteous people, with values, with respect and dignity. And that night, and I don't know if it was one night, but like basically she goes and she lives with 100 men. Like she goes and she just leaves it all. She could have gone into Moab and brought the values. She didn't have to become Jewish. There's a thing called righteous among the nations, where you bring the Jewish values of the Torah values into the world. There's a lot of people like that in Texas called the Noachites. B'nai Noachites. Actually, their center is in Katy, Texas. My husband used to go teach them. Rabbi Wolbe teaches them. This is a very amazing group that they believe that the Jews are the chosen nation. They believe in a one God, and they hold by the 7 laws of Noah. They're called Noachites. And the Torch rabbis are very involved with them because they want the guidance and the spirituality. They don't try to become Jewish. They say we need to have righteous among the nations. We are righteous Gentiles. That's what our job is. Okay. I met a guy. It was an amazing. I told you guys this story, but it's fascinating. The movie Indiana Jones was written and inspired by a real archaeologist named Wendell Jones, who lived in Waxahachie, Texas. I didn't know there was a real place like that. My dad always used to say, where are you going, to Waxahachie, Texas? I thought he made it up. I didn't know there's a real place like that. So one day we're driving back, I think it was from Dallas or something. We're in the gas station and he starts speaking Hebrew to us. Shalom Aleichem, I'm Wendell Jones. And I've heard about him because my friend used to go on archaeological excavation digs with him. And he was on a quest to find the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark based on his personality and his story. He actually did find artifacts in the Dead Sea caves area, Qumran. He found residue of the Curated, of the incense that was kept in these jars. He had a theory where the lost ark is, Vatican, by the way. So, like, this guy was amazing, okay? But he said to me, he had 12 children. He actually had a son that was part of the Meyerland Minion. He passed away a few years ago. Myra is not on, but she would probably be able to tell us more about him. And he was a Noachide. His kids converted to Judaism, but he said, my job is to, bring the values of Judaism. So Orpah could have brought the values of Judaism into the world. She didn't have to be a Jew, she could have just stayed a moral person, shine light, be an ambassador to God in the world without trying to proselytize, just be an ambassador, a good person, a mensch. She goes and she completely goes promiscuous. What happens? There's a psychological phenomenon. When you don't feel worthy and you're so self-loathing and so judgmental towards yourself, what happens? I'm going to open up the mic. Tell me, what happens when someone feels unworthy? they have to self-fulfill the prophecy of themselves. Let's say I label a kid, oh, you're so dumb, you're so stupid. So they now believe that, and they got to prove that they're unworthy. So she had such a low self-esteem when she was leaving Naomi, her mother-in-law, that she now had to go and completely let go. That's what happened to her. Now she has this, one of her descendants is Goliath. I forgot, I don't know how to say it in English, Goliath or Goliath. In Hebrew, it's Goliath. I can't hear you.
Goliath.
Goliath, okay. So Goliath, he is her like great-grandson. Now this is kind of wild. Look at history. The two sisters, who is the descendant, the great-grandson of Ruth is King David. Great-grandson of Orpah is Goliath. What happens? The battle between Goliath and David, and King David defeats Goliath, right? And King David is instructed that he's not going to build the Holy Temple because he was involved in wars. What are these wars? It's these ideological wars between the Davidic dynasty and the Pelishtim Palestinian dynasty that comes from Orpah. These two worlds collide, and King David doesn't get, his son doesn't get to build, King Solomon doesn't build the temple until his dad has defeated all the Pelishtim. Now this battle is not over. We are still dealing with the descendants of Orpah. And what is the real difference between us? King David, as I said, and Ruth believe you could fall down, you could be in a low place, you lift yourself up. Ruth said, I lost my husband, but I'm still going to go. And she rebuilds her life, and she gets married, and she has a child, and she believes in birthing life. What does Orpah do? She gives up on herself. What is it? Someone who could live with 100 men in like a night. The Midrash, I don't know if it's literal, but the idea is that she gave up on herself, that there's no value to life. And that is the ideology that we still see with our enemies. They don't value life. In Judaism, we value life. We value peace, right? And this battle ideology is still taking place. Like the battles are not won. When will we win this battle? When King David comes. When King David, I mean, when the Messiah comes. When Mashiach comes, descendant Mashiach ben David is going to come. He's going to win our wars, and bring peace into the world, and there will be a consciousness. What's the consciousness of the Davidic dynasty? It's okay if you messed up. You just get up and lift yourself up and reconnect to the Almighty. It's never too late to get married again with the Almighty. It's never too late. Our anniversary is taking place Saturday night. Each and every one of us on anniversary is taking place. We're getting married with the Almighty. What does that even mean? It means bringing it down to practicality. It means creating an intimate relationship with God. It's understanding that God has put me in this world for a very specific reason. A thing that only I can do. There's never been another Bobby in the world. And there never will be. The world depends on you. The world depends on me. Meaning we have a job to do. And that's to bring godliness into the world. Is to bring Torah into the world, Not proselytize. We don't need everybody to become Jewish, okay? We have enough neurotic Jews around. We don't need more. But I'm talking about we want to bring the idea of peace, of wholesomeness, of tikkun olam to everybody. Okay, that's our job, right? We're ambassadors. We're God's ambassadors in this world. Now let's go back and we're going backwards. Elimelech and Naomi, what's going on? If he's a leader, like he's the rabbi, he's the head of Torch, why is he leaving his nation, his brothers, his community in a time of crisis? That's wrong, right? So let me tell you, Elimelech had prophecy, and the Midrash tells us that he knew that somehow through his dynasty, the Messiah is going to come. And he also knew that it was going to come from Moab. And so the Megillah starts with the story that there was famine in the land. The Hasidic masters tell us famine in the land represents water. When there's no water, it represents Torah. Torah is water, and there was a thirst. They were thirsty. What does that mean? That they were void of Torah. The generation was very much into like whatever, like Vegas, like gambling and whatever the world is into, Instagram and externalities and money and fame and power, everything you're seeing wrong in the world right now. You know what I'm saying? So he saw the famine. What we're talking about, the spiritual famine that's taking place in Israel. He said, you know what? I'm going to leave. Me and my wife are going to leave, and we're going to bring change. We're going to import change. So they go to Moab, and then their kids marry out. Now, what's wrong with their plan? Why does Elimelech die? He first of all lost all his money when he did that. He went down. And then his kids marry out and marry these girls. And they die, right? And then Ruth comes back to Israel. And the continuation of the story of Ruth is that Naomi knows that the Messiah is going to come from Moab. And she said, there's no accident here that Ruth, my daughter-in-law, the widow, followed me into Israel and is committed to Judaism. She holds the key to redemption. Do you know that the root letters of Geulah, redemption, is Gaal, Gimel, Aleph, Lamed. It is mentioned 32 times in this Megillah. Goel, Gaal, Igal, Goalenu, Geulah. It's all in this Megillah, in this book, the book of Ruth, is the book of redemption. The seeds of redemption are taking place here. And that's, by the way, a Jewish idea. When we look at our ancestors that went through an Inquisition and went through the Holocaust, they could have just completely given up. But they got married and had children and and they built Torah institutions. They didn't give up on Judaism. And Judaism is flourishing. Look at Israel. Look at the Jewish community of Houston is growing crazy. Probably one of the fastest growing Jewish communities in the United States is Houston. So much Torah. It's unbelievable. Like if you want, those who live in Houston, you could be busy all day long. Torch is constantly having classes. Like there's ongoing, every community, every shul, it's amazing, right? It's so annoying. I ate a pecan an hour ago and pieces of it are stuck in my throat. It's like, can't get it out. I'm like, so annoyed. Never eat pecans before a class. Note to self, yeah? So now, what's wrong with Elimelech and Naomi is that they try to hasten redemption. And it wasn't God's plan. You see, sometimes we say, okay, let's go for this, Like King David also made this mistake. He knew in prophecy that him and Bathsheba are destined to have a son who's going to build a holy temple. She was meant to be a soulmate and his wife, but her husband was going to die and then she was going to marry him. So what did he do? He sent her husband to war and he was killed. He orchestrated, it didn't look right. It wasn't time. It's about timing. Redemption has to do with timing. By the way, healing also has to do with timing, has to do with redemption. Sometimes you're talking to someone, you got to change your path, you got to change your life. They're not open to it. It's about timing. Suddenly it clicks. Like you could talk to your teenagers until they're blue in the face. It's not going to help. Suddenly one day maturity kicks in, right? Redemption is something that comes with timing. So Elimelech and Naomi, their mistake was that they try to hasten redemption. Naomi now is fixing it by encouraging Ruth to go and to find a suited husband from their dynasty. Okay, so there is the levirate marriage because her children died without leaving a legacy. So she encourages her to go to Boaz, which was her husband's relative, and very uncomfortable for Ruth because she's very modest and very introverted, and it's not her thing. She gets go to the field and lay next to him. Very uncomfortable for someone who's not like that. But she's like, this is for the sake of heaven. And she proposes to him, like, really, by Jewish law, you're supposed to marry me to keep the dynasty and the legacy of the sons of Elimelech going. And he says, you know what? I will do it, but there's someone, a relative that's closer. Halachically, he should do it. And that man chose not to do it. And then Boaz says, I will marry you. We know the story that tells us the Midrash. Boaz was like in his 80s, and he impregnated her that night. They got married, and he died the next day. But what happened there? The birth of redemption took place there, because she now carries Oved, Yishai, and who leads to the birth of King David, right? So we're seeing something so fascinating. What did King David and Ruth have? They birth life. They don't give up on life, you know? And they understand that there's a mission, there's a legacy. I was going back to what we said that Naomi is conveying to her daughter-in-laws. She says, Judaism, it's not just an idea. It's not some kind of theology. It's a religion of actions. It's actions. You can't just talk kindness. We actually have to be kind. By the way, interesting, the connection of Ruth is considered the book of kindness because Boaz showed kindness to her. She showed kindness to her mother-in-law and then abandoned her. And she took care of her because her mother-in-law was very, very poor and she didn't have food. Ruth was going to the fields, collecting grains for her, humiliating herself to sustain her mother-in-law. We see a lot of kindness here, you know. We're seeing the kindness in Boaz to keep the legacy of late Elimelech's family going, right? And it's no coincidence because the foundation for Judaism and the Torah is chesed. You can't have Torah without chesed and chesed without Torah. It's one of the foundations that the world stands on. So it's no coincidence that we're reading this Megillah during Shavuot. So now we're going back to Ruth. So she lives with Boaz and gives birth to David HaMelech, right? She's the mother of Mashiach. That's like just unbelievable. She comes, she's a Moabite. By the way, remember the lineage is so dark from all directions. Like Moabite means Moab, from father. Then remember the story of Lot and his daughters, the insensual, like the not proper relationship that took place there. Moab comes from there, just to show you that no matter how low you sink, you could always reroute yourself and reconnect. And there were these sparks of holiness there, you know. By the way, they say that there was so much holiness, sparks of holiness and yearning in the world when the Torah came down, that literally the energy of those sparks is right now in the world. What of those sparks? Sparks of teshuvah, sparks of yearning, sparks of wanting. So if you tune into it, like you have the kavanah, the intention, you will have like help, because this time has this energy in the world. It's available to us. It's a time where we could really reconnect. If we feel like we've gone distant, this is a time where we could reconnect. There's these sparkles in the world right now that we could connect to. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. Are there any questions? Please, I'm open to try to answer. Okay. Okay. So I want to end with a story about the idea that Judaism is like a religion of action, and it's about doing things. In the camps in Auschwitz, there was a rabbi, and it was 1944, and he was like in the camps and no matzah for the past when did the war start? 1940, right? So 4 years. So he goes to the commander of his bunk, and he says to him, you don't have to give us bread for a week if you allow us to bake matzahs. We have this Jewish bread we want to make. This commander, is thinking, okay, I don't have to feed them for a week. And all this guy, he said, I want some flour and water. And he's like, okay. that's cheaper for us. Like they'll save, money, so to say, right? They're Nazis, right? It's all about calculating numbers here. So they, after work, they come back, they're broken physically. They build a little oven, they light, and the Rebbe calls the people in the bunk, and they take the flour and the water, and they're baking matzah. It's going to be Seder night the next night. The commander, this ugly Nazi, cruel guy, walks in. He says, "What do you guys think you're doing?" And he starts beating them up and destroying the oven, smashing the matzah, and he says, if you ever think of doing this again, like his word wasn't obviously his word. And they go to sleep broken, go to work the next day, and that next night is the Seder night. And as they're laying there, if you've been to Auschwitz, you've seen it, and you've seen it in movies, and it's these basically wooden boards that 30 people had to fit on, and they all had to be in one position, because if not, other people would get crushed. And they're hungry, and they're tired, and their spirits are broken, because it's Seder night, and here they are in Auschwitz in the dark, and they feel such darkness in their heart. And the Rebbe says, "Hey, you know what? I didn't tell you, but I actually salvaged a few pieces of matzah, like a few crumbs of matzah from the oven." He didn't get all the crumbs. So he's holding it like in a little piece of material that he found, and he holds it and he opens it up. And he says, who should get to say, there's not enough here to give to all of us, who should get to say the blessing over the matzah? Such a big mitzvah. And everybody says, Rebbe, you should do it. You risked your life. He beat you up real bad. You should eat the matzah. You should get to do the mitzvah, the merit of the mitzvah of matzah. And a woman that was there, and she has a 10-year-old son in the camp. She got up and she rose and she said, no, my son should be able to eat these few crumbs of matzah and say the bracha, because we need to carry on this legacy. And we need 50 years from now, a father to sit there and tell the story to his children why we are eating matzah. And the Rebbe turned to her and he says, you're right. And this little boy, everybody was around him, and they're risking their life to be gathered like this. And the boy said, Al achilat matzah, the special bracha that we say about for matzah, and he ate it. Years later, this woman survived. I don't know if her son survived. In the story, the rabbi that told the story over, he didn't say if the son survived. And she wanted to rebuild her life, which was an incredible thing that these people did. People got married in what did they call those camps that they built after they were liberated? I forgot the name for it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like the American camps, and it was like these camps that they built while they were rehabilitating, while they're going to go to this country, look for their relatives. There's a name for this. I don't know why it escapes me now. So she's in one of these camps, and she had moved to Israel. People were getting married in those camps, mamash in those camps, and said, you know what? Let's build homes. Let's build Jewish homes. That's the answer. That's, by the way, the same answer of David, King David, and Ruth, not Orpah. Give it all up and kill yourself spiritually. Let's rebuild. Let's birth life. So her friend arranges a date for her, and she says, come tonight to my house. There's someone that wants to meet you. And she comes to the house, and she looks at this man. And it's that rabbi from Auschwitz, this rabbi with the incident of the matzah. And she says, Rebbe, why would you want to meet me? I don't come from like a lineage. I'm just a simple Jewish girl. I don't come from a Hasidic dynasty. Why would you want to date me? And he says, a woman that understood the message of the legacy of the Jewish people, that it's about actions. It's about giving it over to the next generation. Midor lador. That's a woman with that level of faith and emunah. That's a woman I want to build the Jewish home with. And they lived happily ever after. Okay. So they got married and they had more children. So Baruch Hashem. So that's like what it's all about. It's about birthing life. It's about falling and getting up, falling and getting up. That is the message of the characters of Shavuot. And that actually connecting also to the message of the Torah. and that this is a real relationship and God yearns to be in a relationship with us. And I want to give us all a blessing and end with the blessing that may we feel God's love like a blanket that covers all of us. Have you ever been to a chuppah? I've been to a chuppah. It was so beautiful. There was the canopy, and then there was the chatan and kala, the bride and groom stand, and they put a talid over both of them. That's really what it's about. God is spreading the talid over us, says, I love you so much. I want this relationship with you. So this is the time to give back that hug. Shavuot, our anniversary, our declaration of love and commitment for one another, where we feel it like a blanket, like a talis that covers us, a blanket of protection, a blanket of love, a blanket of unconditional love. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should only mamash feel it and carry this throughout the year. Technical announcement, and it pains me to say this, the next 2 weeks I can't give class because I have very intense things going on. I have appointments. My husband's coming back. He was for a month in America. He's coming back tomorrow night. I'm so excited. We've been baking in all his favorite baked goods. So he comes home and we're so excited that he's coming back. And we're going to try to get away from the kids and do a little escape. And I have a lot of doc appointments and stuff. And then the following week, I'm in a special women's retreat. I wish you were all here. I'll let you, Yocheved, know about it. It's Devorah. I don't know if you're up to it. It's on the beach. There's partial. You could come for 1 day, 2 days. And it's like a women's retreat, and I'm giving a workshop there, and I'm very excited about this. So we will meet again in 2 weeks. I will send reminders through the WhatsApp. And blessings to all. Chag Sameach. Enjoy your cheesecake. By the way, I'm looking, if you can, for a good cheesecake recipe, if you don't mind giving me. Okay, I'm making like an Israeli cheesecake recipe where it's no bake. You dip cookies in
fresh.
chocolate.
No, I used to do that too. My recipes in the States, and bring it with me. I know you put cookies, crumbs, and then fresh cheese on it, and yeah.
I want a Philadelphia. Maybe I'll go online and see if I could find something that's trusted. Okay, everybody, take care. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Great class. Thank you so much.